October 7th, 2023. That date changed everything. I'm speaking to you from Israel, where for the last 2 years we've been living through something that's forced us to ask the hardest questions. Questions about survival, questions about purpose, questions about what happens next. But here's what is remarkable. History shows us that God uses devastating tragedies as the launching points for great things, for great revolutions. The Jewish people suffered their worst catastrophe during the Holocaust. Yet, just 3 years later came the establishment of the State of Israel, launching a period of growth and creativity unseen since biblical times. So let me ask you, what if October 7th wasn't just an ending, but a beginning? 2 years of war has brought something into focus that was always there, but we couldn't quite see. The attacks and the global response that followed did more than test Israel's military. It revealed who stands with us and who stands against us. They exposed the fault lines that divide civilization from barbarism. And something else happened, something unexpected. What's emerging from this crucible is a crystallization of partnerships that will define the next era of human history. Let me be specific. The U.S.-Israel relationship held strong under the most extreme pressure imaginable, but we witnessed something deeper than military or diplomatic cooperation. We saw the recognition that Jews and Christians share not just strategic interests, but a common destiny rooted in the same cherished values. At the same time, and this is important, those who celebrated terrorism in the streets of London and Paris and Melbourne, for example, exposed themselves with sickening clarity. They've removed their masks. The world can now see which side stands for life and which side celebrates death, which ideologies build and which seek only to destroy. But here's the thing. Progressing to the next stage of history requires more than a military victory. It requires a big idea, powerful enough to inspire people across nations, across faiths, and across cultures. Theodor Herzl, the founder of modern Zionism, once said, "The idea is for the community what bread and water are for the individual." We hunger and thirst for ideas that give meaning to our struggles. This book, Universal Zionism, and this course develop the ideas that our generation has been waiting for.
Are you enjoying this Bible class? Take your study deeper with Bible Plus. Explore over 200 courses taught by expert Israeli educators, right from the land where it happened. Get a free month trial using the code BibleStudy at checkout. The link is in the description below. Now back to your class.
It's called Universal Zionism, and it represents the culmination of a story that's been unfolding for millennia, a story foretold in the world's most influential book, the Bible. Now, the Bible is undoubtedly the most influential work in human history. More copies printed, more languages translated, more lives transformed than any other book. Yet when it comes to understanding Israel, the main theme of the Bible, the people of Israel and the land of Israel, nearly everyone has it wrong. Let me show you what I mean. If I asked you what the Bible considers the golden age of human history, what would you say? The Garden of Eden, right? Perfect harmony between God and nature. Well, that's wrong. The Torah points to an even greater era, the reign of King Solomon. Scripture speaks of this time when everyone was, quote, dwelling securely, every man under his vine and under his fig tree. This wasn't just material prosperity. This was a moment when the knowledge of God spread outward, when the nations streamed to Jerusalem seeking wisdom, when Solomon's temple became a house of prayer for all nations. Kings came from distant lands to hear Solomon's wisdom. Trade routes connected Israel to 3 continents. Peace reigned not through conquest, but through the power of righteousness and wisdom. For a brief shining moment, the world glimpsed what civilization could become when aligned with God's purpose. However, Solomon's golden age did not last. The wisest of all kings made a critical mistake. He accommodated foreign gods to please his many wives. He imposed heavy taxes, and he let the spiritual foundation that his father David built erode beneath the weight of material success. The kingdom divided, the temple was destroyed, and the people scattered. Yet the prophets saw further. Isaiah, Micah, Amos, they describe a future that would surpass even Solomon's times. The exiles would return, the barren land would bloom, Jerusalem would be reestablished as the moral capital, and the earth would be full of the knowledge of the Lord. Central to this vision was Israel's role as a light unto the nations. A restoration meant not just to benefit the Jews, but to illuminate a path for all humanity. After October 7th, we stand at the threshold of that glorious era. We have the historical perspective that Solomon lacked. We have the technological capabilities his era couldn't imagine, and we have the ability to learn from his errors. Universal Zionism will tell the story of Israel's progression through 3 phases, each corresponding to one of Israel's most famous kings. First, we have political Zionism, represented by King Saul. Saul's mission was security and normalization, that we may be like all other nations. Theodor Herzl, David Ben-Gurion, and even Prime Minister Netanyahu each contributed to the foundation of political Zionism. They brought Jews back from the 4 corners of the earth, built a world-class innovation hub, created one of the most capable armies in the world. And then the next phase was religious Zionism. Religious Zionism is represented by King David. David prioritized spiritual foundations. When David danced before the Lord with all of his might, he showed that true strength comes not from military power alone, but from spiritual vitality. Israel has been blessed with leaders like Rabbi Abraham Isaac Kook, who inspired both Jews and Christians to rethink their relationship to each other and to the land of Israel. Third, Universal Zionism, the third phase, Universal Zionism, is represented not by King Saul or David, but by King Solomon. And Solomon's mission was spreading the knowledge of the one true God of Israel to all of mankind. This is the key. Solomon could only reach those levels because he stood on the shoulders of his father David. He stood on David's, and he built upon David's spiritual renaissance, which itself rested on Saul's political stability. So each stage builds on the previous stage, on the one before. This isn't just a theory for me. I've actually lived this myself. I grew up in Columbus, Ohio, in an Orthodox Jewish community. My grandparents were Holocaust survivors, and their stories about Auschwitz, resilience, and faith shaped everything in my life. After high school, I spent a year studying in a yeshiva outside of Jerusalem. We have a saying, the air of Israel makes one wise, and I fell in love with studying Torah for the first time in my life in the land where it all happened. Concepts that seemed abstract in America came alive here in Israel. In 2011, my wife Abby and I and our young kids, we made Aliyah. We moved to Israel. And what I didn't anticipate was how intensely my worldview would change here in Israel. Let me tell you about one morning that captured everything. My daughters wanted to experience sunrise over the Sea of Galilee. So one spring morning, it was Passover, we hiked up Mount Arbel in the dark. And the climb was steep, and I had my two kids with me. But then slowly, at the top of the mountain, when we got there, you see the first rays of the sun appearing over the eastern horizon. The mountains of Jordan emerged as silhouettes. The sun crept higher, its rays sparkling across the waters, transforming the entire landscape into brilliant clarity. Standing there, I remembered a Talmudic teaching that occurred at that very spot. The Talmud says that two great sages were debating. Would redemption come suddenly like lightning, or would the redemption of Israel come gradually like the dawn? And Rabbi Joshua said, just as the dawn appears slowly, kima kima in Hebrew, so too will Israel's redemption unfold slowly. So I was standing there with my girls, watching this ancient metaphor come to life, and it hit me that the return of the Jewish people, the rebuilding of our homeland, the ingathering of the exiles, all unfolding slowly, just as prophesized. And like our history, our future will unfold in the same way. More people worldwide will open their eyes to what we could see from that mountain. That Israel's light is meant to illuminate not just the Jewish people, but all of humanity.
Are you enjoying this Bible class? Take your study deeper with Bible Plus. Explore over 200 courses taught by expert Israeli educators, right from the land where it happened. Get a free month trial using the code BibleStudy at checkout. The link is in the description below. Now back to your class.
When the Gaza war dragged on and the political support for Israel began reversing, I started questioning things. Maybe Jews couldn't really count on anyone else besides ourselves. Maybe this relationship between Christians and Jews that we were developing here for many years at Israel 365, maybe we couldn't count on the Christians. Where was everyone? What was going on? But somewhere in those dark moments in the beginning of the war, I realized that the answer was the opposite. Non-Jews were an essential part of the solution. The relationship between Jews and Christians were a critical part of God's plan. I knew it in my heart, and I felt the need to express these ideas, so I started to immerse myself in Torah study. And at the same time, Zionist history and Zionist ideology. This is what was going through my mind when the war began. Needed to try to understand what was happening. Ancient texts about warfare, ancient texts in the Bible, and the settlement of Israel suddenly seemed so much more relevant than ever before. Everything that we were experiencing in this war was spelled out in the Torah and recurring in cycles. The opposition to Israel, all of the anti-Semitism that was happening wasn't evidence that we were off course. It was actually confirmation that we were approaching our destination. And that's why the forces of evil were starting to emerge even stronger and stronger. Universal Zionism comes from this recognition that Israel's return, the return of the people of Israel to the land of Israel, isn't merely to escape from persecution. We didn't come back to Israel just to flee from anti-Semitism. The return of Israel is the ultimate fulfillment of God's most repeated promise. The most repeated promise in all of the Bible is that the Jews are supposed to return to the land, which was designed to unleash God's greatest blessings upon the entire world. And when Jews and non-Jews together align ourselves with the mission of restoring Israel, we become active spiritual partners with one another and with God, with Hashem. The epic conflict between Jews and the nations that has characterized most of our history will finally begin to dissolve. And this is why Universal Zionism, this new ideology, matters as much to a Christian in Kentucky as it does to a Jew in Jerusalem. Christians worldwide can tap into the same blessing without even leaving their homes. They simply need to align with the forces working for civilization's advancement rather than the destruction of our Western civilization. So after 2 years of warfare, a war between light and dark, between truth and lies, we stand at a crossroads. We stand at an unprecedented crossroads. And the choice will determine not only Israel's future, but the future of human civilization itself. The events since October 7th have forced this choice into stark clarity. There's no more neutral positions remaining. Every nation, every institution, every individual must choose. Universal Zionism isn't just an idea. It's an invitation to participate in the unfolding of biblical prophecies in the most important story ever told. But before we determine where we are going, we need to understand where we are now and how we got here. How did Zionism, once embraced with pride by Christians and Jews alike, become a derogatory term? The answers lie in understanding the remarkable journey that brought us here, tracing the evolution of an idea that began as a desperate response to anti-Semitism and persecution and has developed into humanity's greatest hope for redemption. That journey begins with a king named Saul, a journalist named Herzl, and the birth of political Zionism. I hope you enjoyed this section. If you want to go deeper, please make sure to purchase a copy of Universal Zionism on the Israel 365 store.